In life, there are people who don't speak eloquently or make grand promises, yet they are trusted wherever they go and entrusted with important responsibilities. They don't need to make a first impression or try to stand out, but the longer you interact with them, the more confident and comfortable they become. The ancients called such a person consistent in both heart and action. They remain the same from beginning to end, not changing their demeanor for personal gain. They don't live two versions of themselves, one when things are going well, another when things are difficult. What others see today is the same person tomorrow, and perhaps for many years to come. In a world of constant change, people's hearts shift rapidly. Therefore, stability is a rare commodity. The ancients understood that one doesn't need an exceptionally talented person by their side, but rather someone who can anticipate someone unpredictable, someone who doesn't change with the wind. Winning hearts and minds isn't about momentary cleverness, but about long-term consistency. A person who speaks well might initially gain favor, but only someone who lives consistently can maintain trust. Trust doesn't come from one instance of being right, but from many instances of not disappointing others. Ancient wisdom observes that when a person's attitude changes for personal gain, those around them become wary. Today friendly, tomorrow cold, close when needed, distant when the benefit is gone. Even with justifiable reasons, this inconsistency erodes trust little by little. People who are consistent are different. When they say something, others don't need to verify it multiple times. They take on a task, others don't need to worry too much. Not because they are perfect, but because they are predictable, easy to understand, and don't betray expectations. Consistency is also reflected in how people are treated. There's no flattery based on status, nor contempt for those of lower standing. Whoever you are today, you will be tomorrow. Their attitude remains the same. This is what makes others feel consistently respected, not conditionally. The ancients taught that maintaining consistency is harder than demonstrating intelligence. It requires self-control, inner discipline, and not chasing short-term gains. But once achieved, it becomes a very deep foundation for all relationships. Consistent people don't need much explanation. Their actions speak for themselves. They don't need grand promises. They always do their part. They don't need proof. Time has proven them right. If you want to build lasting trust, start with the smallest things. Do what you say you will do. Be the same way you are today, and be the same tomorrow. Maintain your principles even when no one is watching. That's how our ancestors accumulated credibility day by day. This video will help you understand more deeply why consistency is the strongest foundation for winning people's hearts, and why people who are consistent always have a lasting place in people's minds. Subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to learn together how to live a more stable and trustworthy life every day. 1. The ancients said that a trustworthy person is someone who is the same today as yesterday, no different tomorrow than today. This saying sounds simple, but the longer one lives and the more experiences one has, the more one understands that this is a very high standard, higher than talent, higher than intelligence, higher than even fleeting success. Because to maintain that consistency over time, a person must have a very solid foundation within. In life, it's not difficult to meet people who speak well. It's not difficult to meet people who do their jobs well. But it's very difficult to meet people who are consistent. When they have nothing, they live one way. When they have a little advantage, they change. When they face difficulties, they change again. Because of this, people's hearts are unsettled. They don't know who the real people are. They don't know how much to trust. Ancient sages observed that trust doesn't come from one grand act, but from the consistent repetition of small actions. Keeping a promise today, keeping a promise tomorrow, keeping a promise next year, behaving kindly today, doing so tomorrow. This consistency remains unchanged, whether things are going well or not. It is this repetition that creates a sense of certainty in people's hearts. People can forgive mistakes, but it's hard to accept inconsistency. A person may have made mistakes in the past, but if they are consistent in correcting them, people can still open their hearts to them. Conversely, a person who is one way today and another way tomorrow, even if they have never done anything wrong, will still make others wary. The ancients believed that a trustworthy person is not someone who never makes mistakes, but rather someone who doesn't change their principles according to circumstances. They uphold morality when it's advantageous and maintain it when it's disadvantageous. They maintain their integrity when valued and remain steadfast when disregarded. This is the difficult quality. In reality, many people treat you well when they need you. But when they no longer need you, their attitude changes instantly. Many people are kind to those in power, but cold to those who don't offer any benefit. These changes don't need to be spoken aloud, but people sense them very clearly. The ancients said that the human heart is like a scale. Every time you change for your own benefit, the scale of trust will tip slightly. It won't fall over immediately, but it will tilt gradually. So eventually, with just one more small change, trust will collapse. A person who is the same today as yesterday is someone who doesn't let circumstances define their character. Circumstances may change their role, but they don't change how they are as people. They may speak less, act differently, but their core remains the same. They still respect others, keep their word, and know where the boundaries should not be crossed. Ancient people placed particular importance on consistency in things that went unnoticed. When no one was watching, when there was no direct benefit, when there was no need to show off, a person should still behave as if someone were present. This is where character is most clearly revealed. Many people live as two people. One person when they are in the eye, another person when no one is looking. This difference will eventually be revealed because no one can play two roles for too long. The ancients understood this, which is why they taught us to maintain a single, true self. A trustworthy person is someone whose reactions you can predict in many situations. Not because they're boring, but because they have clear principles. You know they won't betray the common good. No, they won't change their attitude because of gossip. No, they won't turn their backs just because circumstances change. In the workplace, consistent individuals are often given important tasks, not because they are the best, but because they cause fewer surprises. They don't make others worry, and they don't make the team guess their intentions. This predictability is a sign of high reliability. The ancients said that intelligence inspires admiration, but consistency inspires confidence. Admiration can come quickly, but confidence is what keeps people around for the long term. In every relationship, from family and friends to work, a sense of security is always more important than excitement. A person who is the same today as they were yesterday is also someone who doesn't change their tune with the crowd. When the majority praises them, they don't become arrogant. When the majority criticizes them, they don't hastily turn their backs on what they once believed in. They listen, they consider, but they don't lose sight of their core principles. Ancient wisdom holds that those who easily change their minds are not necessarily flexible. They may simply lack a solid foundation. Flexibility means adjusting one's approach while maintaining direction. Inconsistency, on the other hand, means changing direction simply because the wind has changed. Trustworthy people don't chase short-term gains, because they look further ahead. They understand that being right once might cost them immediate profit, but it earns them lasting trust. And trust is the hardest thing to buy with material gain. In personal relationships, consistent people don't need to talk much about morality. Their way of life speaks for itself. They don't need to explain why they do what they do because they always do it. That consistency is the most convincing explanation. The ancients said that time is the fairest test. The deceitful will be exposed, the honest will be revealed. But only those with enough patience and inner discipline can pass this test. Not everyone can endure living righteously without receiving any reward. People who are the same today as yesterday often don't stand out at first. They don't create a sensation or make a strong impression. But the longer they are around, the more they gain trust. And once that trust is established, their position becomes irreplaceable. The ancients considered consistency to be the foundation of credibility. Without this foundation, all talent is fragile. A highly skilled but unpredictable person will sooner or later tire others out. A person who is average but stable is chosen for the long haul. Being no different tomorrow from today doesn't mean being conservative. It means not betraying core values. You can learn more, understand more deeply, do better. But the way you treat people, the way you keep your word, the way you take responsibility, remains the same. The ancients taught that self-cultivation is not about surpassing others, but about not losing oneself when circumstances change. When you maintain your integrity, others will cherish you in their hearts. Ultimately, a trustworthy person doesn't need to make many promises, because they did it yesterday, they do it today. And tomorrow, people believe they will continue to do so. No grand commitments, no flowery words. Just the persistent repetition of a consistent person. It's a slow but steady path. Quiet but profound. And, according to the ancients, it's the only way to build true trust in people's hearts. 2. Consistency begins with clear life values. No ambiguity, no changing with the wind. This statement touches on the core of how a person can stand firm amidst life's many changes. Because if you don't know what you believe in, if you don't know what you value, then all your actions are merely temporary reactions to circumstances. And when circumstances change, people change too. That is the source of inconsistency. Life values are the inner principles that guide a person's thoughts, words, and actions. They answer very fundamental questions. What is right for me? What do I reject? What is more important than immediate gain? When these questions lack clear answers, people are easily swayed by their surroundings. Many people live in a state of ambiguity without realizing it. They work based on fleeting emotions, speak according to their mood, and make decisions under pressure. Today they believe something because it seems beneficial, but tomorrow, hearing someone else say something different, they lean in a different direction. It's not because they are bad people, but because they lack a fixed inner compass. Ancient wisdom holds that a person without an inner compass is like a boat without an anchor. The wind blows in whichever direction it goes. Sometimes it drifts in the right direction, sometimes in the wrong. But the most frightening thing is that no one can predict where it will go. And the human heart greatly fears this unpredictability. True values are not found in grand slogans or beautiful words. They are reflected in small, everyday choices. When something is advantageous but goes against principles, what do you choose? When you are at a disadvantage but maintain your self-respect, would you accept it? When the majority do something, but you think it's wrong, would you dare to stand by and do it? Only when these choices are repeated in the same direction will life values gradually be formed and strengthened. And from there, consistency will have a place to stand. Without clear life values, consistency is merely random. Sometimes they are the same, sometimes they are not. But it is not sustainable. Many people think that consistency is stubbornness, that it means refusing to change. But the ancients made a clear distinction. Consistency is about upholding values, not about sticking to methods. Methods can be flexible, but values remain unchanged. Gao. You can change your communication methods, but still maintain respect. You can change jobs, but still uphold integrity. That is true consistency. People with clear values tend to talk less about themselves, because they don't need to constantly explain who they are. Their actions speak for themselves. Over time, others recognize them. And it is this consistent repetition that builds trust. Conversely, people lacking clear values often have to talk a lot. They talk to prove something, to justify themselves, to mask their inner turmoil. But the more they talk, the more their inconsistency becomes apparent. Because their words today no longer match their actions tomorrow. Living without ambiguity requires honesty with oneself. It means daring to look at weaknesses, daring to admit one's shortcomings, and daring to choose a set of values to follow, even if that path isn't always easy. Ancient wisdom teaches that people with clear values tend to be slow-paced. They don't rush to react. They pause to reflect on their actions in relation to their principles. This might make them seem inflexible, but in reality it's a form of steadfastness. Not changing with the wind is a difficult state to attain, because the wind of self-interest, of public opinion, of collective pressure, is always blowing. Without a set of values to anchor oneself, people are easily swept away. Today, they believe one thing. Tomorrow, they believe something else. In the end, they no longer recognize who they are. Consistent people aren't always right, but they are people who, even when they're wrong, are still wrong in the same honest way. They admit their mistakes, they correct them, but they don't change their values to avoid responsibility. This earns them immense respect from others. Having clear values also helps people become more at peace. When you know what is important, you are no longer distracted by things that don't concern you. Praise or criticism no longer makes you change direction so quickly because you have your own path. In relationships, people with clear values often inspire confidence in others. This is because they don't act two-faced. Their attitudes don't change based on status, and they aren't friendly today and distant tomorrow. This stability creates a great sense of security. The ancients said that people don't fear poverty or hardship. They only fear not knowing where to rely on. A person with clear values is a spiritual anchor for those around them. They don't need to say much. Just being there is enough to provide strength. Consistency doesn't develop overnight. It's the result of countless self-reflections, numerous difficult choices, and many rejections of things that go against one's values. Each time, the inner core is strengthened a little more. Consistent people don't stand out immediately because they don't make a loud fuss about being different. But the longer they go, the clearer their value becomes. And eventually, others will seek them out not because they are the best, but because they are the most trustworthy. Ancient people viewed life values as the root, talent as the branches, and words as the leaves. If the root is not strong, even the most lush branches and leaves will break in a strong wind. A person with clear life values may not speak eloquently or skillfully, but they stand firm. And that firmness has a profound persuasive power. Living without ambiguity means daring to choose a path and accepting that some things won't belong to you. It means not chasing after everything, not catering to everything, but holding on to the core. This very selectivity creates identity and consistency. Ultimately, consistency isn't about receiving praise, but about not losing yourself. When you know what you believe in and live by it every day, even if the wind changes direction, you remain steadfast. And it is this steadfastness, over time, that will make others recognize your true value. 3. People who say one thing and do another will cause unease. This is something the ancients observed very carefully from human life. Because people don't just listen with their ears, they also perceive with their intuition. When words and actions don't match, that intuition immediately sends a warning signal, and a feeling of unease begins to form. In relationships, what people need most isn't sweet words, but stability. If you say one thing today and do something different tomorrow, the other person won't know what to believe. They'll always be on guard. When they're on guard, no one can truly open up. Ancient wisdom says that words are an expression of the heart, and actions are evidence of the heart. When these two things don't align, it means there's an internal imbalance. Either they're unsure of what they believe, or they're willing to change their words for their own benefit. Whatever the reason, the ultimate result is that others lose their sense of security. Insecurity isn't always obvious. It can be very subtle. Initially, it's just a little doubt, a little caution. But over time, as instances of saying one thing and doing another repeat, doubt grows, and trust erodes without one even realizing it. Many people believe that explanation alone is enough. But the ancients understood very well that trust is not built on explanations, but on the consistent repetition of behavior. You can say something very true, very eloquent, but if action doesn't follow, all your words become empty. In the workplace, people who say one thing and do another often wear down the team. They promise things but don't deliver. They demand discipline but act arbitrarily. They talk about fairness but behave impulsively. Gradually, those around them no longer object, but also lose faith. And that's a sign of a deep rift. Ancient wisdom holds that when a person's heart is uneasy, all reasoning becomes weak. You can present numerous arguments, but others will still feel insecure. This is because the problem lies not in logic, but in a wounded sense of security. The same applies to family relationships. Parents may express love, but their actions may be biased. They may say they'll listen, but lack patience. Young children can't articulate this clearly, but they sense this inconsistency very well. And feelings of insecurity develop from a very early age. Adults are no different. They're around someone who's inconsistent. They're constantly trying to guess which version of that person will be. Today, good or bad, gentle or irritable, keeping their word or breaking it. This mental exhaustion causes relationships to drift apart, even if outwardly polite. The ancients taught that people can accept an imperfect person, but it's very difficult to accept someone who is unpredictable. Unpredictable means not knowing the boundaries, not knowing what will happen. It is the root of insecurity. Many people think that having good intentions is enough. But good intentions without proper action become mere words. And repeated empty words will cause others to lose faith in both the good intentions and the person themselves. Insecurity doesn't erupt immediately. It accumulates. Each broken promise is a wound. Each instance of words not matching actions tarnishes the image until trust crumbles. Those involved are often surprised and bewildered. But the ancients said that every outcome leaves its mark long ago. A consistent person isn't someone who never makes mistakes. Rather, it's someone who, even when they do, remains honest. They do what they say they will do. They don't make promises they're not sure they can keep. They don't say things they're not prepared to take responsibility for. This very caution creates a sense of security for others. Conversely, those who say one thing and do another often make promises icily and quickly. But when it comes time to fulfill them, they find excuses. Initially, others may be understanding, but over time, that understanding turns into suspicion, and suspicion turns into distance. The ancients valued trustworthiness more than immediate gain, because gain can be lost and then regained. But when people's hearts are unsettled and trust is broken, it's very difficult to mend. Even if you do the right thing later, others will still harbor a degree of suspicion. Insecurity is contagious. When someone loses trust, they share that experience with others. And your image isn't just damaged in one relationship, but in many others. This is something the ancients always reminded us of when talking about the consequences of breaking trust. Living consistently requires inner discipline. You must know when to stop before speaking. Ask yourself if you can do it. Are you ready to take responsibility? Can you maintain this in the long term? If you're not sure, it's better to remain silent than to say something and then not follow through. Those who can do this usually don't talk much, but every word they utter carries weight. Others listen and feel reassured because they know those words aren't just too flatter, but have been carefully considered. The ancients said that peace of mind is the greatest gift in relationships. A person who brings a sense of security will always have a place in the family. They may not be the most talented or the most skillful, but they are trustworthy. And trustworthiness is the foundation of all lasting relationships. Those who say one thing and do another may achieve short-term benefits, but the price they pay is public unrest. And when public unrest exists, there is no way to go far. Ultimately, everyone makes mistakes at times. The important thing is to recognize and correct them early, before inconsistency becomes a habit, before people silently walk away. If you find these reflections worth pondering, take some time to look back at your own words and actions in important relationships. And if you want to continue learning how to live more consistently, steadfastly, and reliably each day, don't forget to subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to cultivate lasting values from the smallest things together. 4. Trust isn't lost because of major mistakes, but because of small, repeated conflicts. This is something the ancients clearly saw in how people drift apart. It's not always about a major event or a clear shock. Most breakdowns happen silently, slowly, and almost unnoticed until things are irreversible. In life, when a major mistake occurs, people usually have a chance to confront it, to apologize, to make amends. Because major mistakes are easy to see, easy to name, the person who made the mistake knows they are wrong. The person who is hurt also knows why they are hurting. But small conflicts are different. They are vague, scattered, and often overlooked. A broken promise, a slight change in attitude, a slip of the tongue, an unusual reaction. Each thing is small, so small that one easily tells themselves it's nothing, that it's just the circumstances, that it was unintentional. But when these small things repeat themselves, they are no longer small. They accumulate into a very clear feeling, that feeling of unease. The ancients said that the human heart is like the surface of water. A large stone thrown into it will create strong waves, but they will also subside quickly. However, small drops of water falling steadily will cause the water level to change unnoticed. Belief is the same. It's not a single strong blow that shatters it, but rather a subtle change that happens day by day. When minor conflicts arise, people rarely react immediately. They often choose silence, ignore it, or try to explain things themselves. Initially, this is done out of goodwill, to maintain harmony. But the more they ignore it, the more resentment builds up inside them, and at some point, they no longer want to explain. Trust began to fade from that moment, and people stopped hoping, stopped expecting, stopped believing that everything would be done exactly as promised. No arguments, no reproaches. Just a very subtle withdrawal, but a very profound one. Ancient wisdom holds that small conflicts are more dangerous than large ones because they don't force people to confront them. They seep into habits, into perspectives, into feelings. At the time people realize it, their perception of the other person has completely changed. The same applies to work. A leader doesn't need to make major mistakes to alienate subordinates. You just need to consistently say one thing and do another. Make promises and then forget them. Set rules for others, but be flexible with themselves. These things aren't significant enough to warrant opposition, but they're small enough to gradually dampen people's spirits. Subordinates initially try to understand. Then they accept. And finally, they lose faith. They still work, but without dedication, commitment, or a willingness to stand by their leader when needed. In family relationships, trust is lost in a similar way. Not because of one major hurtful incident, but because of unfulfilled promises, delayed commitments, half-hearted listening, and inconsistent concern. Young children sense this very clearly, even if they don't express it. They learn to withdraw and gradually stop sharing. Adults are the same. When faced with repeated small conflicts, they learn to protect themselves. They don't say everything. They don't trust completely. They don't set expectations. The relationship still exists, but it lacks depth. The ancients said that trust is like a thread. It doesn't break with a single snip of scissors, but through daily wear and tear. Every time words don't match actions, it's a wear and tear. Every time attitudes change erratically, it's a wear and tear. Only when the thread breaks do people realize the truth. The point is that those who cause distrust often don't realize it. They don't see the big mistake. They only see that they're still doing their job, still speaking kindly, still having good intentions. But the ancients emphasize that trust doesn't lie in intentions, but in the feelings of others. And that feeling is built from repeated details. Consistency in small things creates a great sense of security. Conversely, inconsistency in small things creates lasting insecurity. And insecurity is the greatest enemy of trust. When people are insecure, they are always on guard, always guessing, always mentally preparing. This state is exhausting, and no one wants to maintain it long term. The simplest solution is to create distance, not necessarily just to stop trusting. The ancients taught that to win people's hearts, one must maintain stability. Perfection isn't necessary. Consistency is key. Admit mistakes. Keep promises. Don't overstate your abilities. Don't act impulsively. These things sound simple, but they require a high degree of inner discipline. Trust is built on small things: keeping a promise, maintaining a consistent attitude, predictable responses. When others know how you'll react in familiar situations, they feel secure. And security is the foundation of trust. Conversely, when your reactions change according to your mood, your interests, and the circumstances, others no longer know your true self. When they don't know, they will keep their distance. The ancients said that losing faith is not as frightening as not knowing when you lost it, because when you don't know, you no longer have the opportunity to correct it. All subsequent efforts become too late. Therefore, reflecting on the small conflicts in daily life is very important. Not to blame yourself, but to make adjustments. Ask yourself if your words and actions are aligned. Is your attitude today the same as yesterday? Is your treatment of others consistent? Trust doesn't require grand gestures. It requires perseverance, consistency, and honesty in every small detail. Those who understand this won't underestimate seemingly insignificant things, because they know that these are the things that determine its longevity. The ancients left behind a very simple reminder. If you want to go far with others, don't let them doubt your every step. When hearts are at peace, even a long journey will no longer feel burdensome. 5. A person who is consistent and unwavering in their actions inspires a sense of security. This is a rare quality in a life full of uncertainties, but it is also the deepest foundation for building lasting trust. Ancient sages observed closely and realized that people don't fear those who are skilled or powerful. What they fear most is those who are unpredictable people, who are one way today and another way tomorrow. When someone is unpredictable, people naturally become wary. Caution doesn't stem from malice. It's a self-protective mechanism. When around someone who is inconsistent, people are forced to observe more, analyze more, and question whether what they say is true or if their actions have a hidden meaning. That state is exhausting, and no one wants to maintain it for long. Conversely, when you meet someone who is consistent, whose reactions are stable, whose principles are clear, and whose behavior remains unchanged, regardless of the person, people will gradually relax. There's no need for scrutiny, no need for defense, no need to guess their intentions. It is this very ease that makes people want to be near them, want to cooperate, and want to bond with them. The ancients said that credibility is not about impressing others, but about reassuring them. Those who inspire confidence don't need to say much, because their stability speaks for itself. They are the same today as they are tomorrow, whether things go well or badly, whether they gain or lose. They maintain their familiar way of behaving. Consistency doesn't require great talent. It requires inner discipline. You have to know what you value and not betray it because of circumstances. Many people are untrustworthy not because they are bad, but because they are easily swayed. They say one thing when it's advantageous and do another when it's disadvantageous. This very inconsistency creates a sense of insecurity for those around them. There's an old story about a carpenter. He wasn't famous for his words, nor did he promote himself. He did only one thing for many years, keeping his appointments, maintaining his prices, and ensuring quality. Whether the customer was a wealthy villager or a poor person from afar, he quoted the same price. He didn't raise the price because the customer was rich, nor did he lower the quality because the customer was poor. He was punctual with appointments. If he was late, he would notify them in advance. If there were any mistakes, he would correct them until the job was done. He never blamed anyone. He never beat around the bush. Initially, he didn't attract much attention because he wasn't particularly remarkable. But over time, those who had worked with him began recommending him to others. He didn't need much praise. He simply said, "Working with this person is reassuring." Good news travels slowly, but it travels very far. It's not through advertising, but through consistent repetition. Those who come later hear stories from those who came before. The prices remain the same, the quality remains the same, the way things are done remains the same, and so they believe. They believe even before meeting the person. What's remarkable is that the carpenter wasn't trying to project an image. He was simply living by his craft. But it was this very stability that made others less wary. When there's no need for caution, people open up. And when hearts open up, relationships naturally become stronger. The ancients considered this the highest level of trustworthiness. It's not about doing something perfectly the first time, but about doing it consistently many times. It's not about maintaining credibility only when it's advantageous, but also when no one is watching, even when there's no immediate benefit. In modern life, people often overestimate moments of brilliance. A single good deed, a single eloquent speech, a single outstanding performance. But the ancients did the opposite. They looked at repetition, repeated behavior, repeated principles, repeated attitudes. It is this repetition that reveals a person's true character. A person who is consistent and unwavering doesn't need to make a strong impression. They leave behind a subtle yet firm feeling. That feeling is one of reassurance. When needed, they can be sought out. When tasks are assigned, they can be trusted. When collaborations are undertaken, there's no need to worry. Conversely, people who are constantly changing their minds depending on the circumstances always leave others to strategize. Today they are friendly, tomorrow they are cold. Today they make promises, tomorrow they forget. Initially the relationship may remain, but an invisible distance has already formed in their hearts. The ancients said that when people are wary, even if they don't say it out loud, the relationship will already be strained. Because being wary means no longer having complete trust. And without complete trust, a relationship cannot last long. Consistency also creates a sense of fairness. When everyone is treated equally, regardless of wealth, social standing, or personal interests, people will have peace of mind. The carpenter in the story doesn't need to talk about morality. His actions speak volumes. Consistency also helps others understand boundaries, knowing what to expect and what not to. When boundaries are clear, no one has to guess. When there's no guessing, relationships become smoother. The ancients taught that a trustworthy person is someone who doesn't make others overthink about them. No need to analyze every word. No need to worry about every action. Just know that they will do as they always do. Consistency, therefore, is not just a virtue. It's a gift to those around you. It gives them a sense of security. Security is what people seek most in any relationship. The old carpenter left behind no books, no teachings, but his way of life is a profound lesson. That sometimes the strongest thing is not advertising, but rather enduring stability over the years. When you are consistent, you don't need to convince anyone. Others will feel it for themselves. And after feeling it long enough, they will believe. Not loudly, not hastily, but very firmly. 6. There's no need to be better than anyone else. Just be stable enough for others to rely on. This is one of the simplest yet most profound philosophies left by our ancestors when discussing how to live among people. In a world that constantly pressures people to stand out, to be better than others, to prove their worth, this saying completely contradicts that. But it is precisely because of this that it touches the root of belief. Ancient people observed that humans don't really need someone who is always the best by their side. They need someone who gives them peace of mind, someone they know for sure how that person will react and behave when things get tough. Someone who won't change for personal gain or circumstances. That stability is more important than any sudden burst of talent. People who want to be better than others often live in a state of comparison. Today, they must be better than this person. Tomorrow, they must not be worse than that person. Their minds are constantly fluctuating, and when the mind is fluctuating, their behavior is very difficult to be consistent. When they win, they are confident. When they lose, they are anxious. When they benefit, they are enthusiastic. When they suffer losses, they become indifferent. Those around them can clearly sense these changes. Conversely, those who don't strive to be better than others tend to live at a slower pace. They focus on maintaining their own rhythm, upholding their principles, and treating others in a familiar way. They don't need to win every comparison, but they win in the most important area: trustworthiness. The ancients said that people rely on each other not out of admiration, but for peace of mind. You might admire someone very talented, but you're not sure you can rely on them long term. You don't know if they'll change when circumstances change. But with someone stable, you know that no matter what happens, they will remain who they are. Stability is demonstrated in very small things. The way you keep your promises, the way you react when faced with difficulties, the way you behave when it's advantageous, the way you act when no one is watching. These things are repeated every day. And it is this repetition that creates a sense of stability in the hearts of others. A person doesn't need to be outstanding. Just do what you did yesterday. Do what you said you would do. Remember your promises. Don't shirk responsibility. When others realize they don't have to guess, worry, or be on guard, they will naturally rely on you. Ancient people believed that society functioned thanks to individuals like them, quiet, unassuming, and self-serving. They didn't seek leadership, but they were a pillar of support. When needed, people turned to them. When difficulties arose, they thought of them. When cooperation was required, people confidently entrusted their work to them. People who constantly strive to be better than others often create invisible pressure on those around them. When in their presence, others easily feel inferior, easily feel compared, and easily feel stressed. Even if the other person doesn't intend it, that competitive energy is still present. And over time, it makes the relationship tiring. Meanwhile, stable people don't create pressure. They don't need others to be better or worse than them. They just need everything to be clear. What's acceptable, what's not, what can be trusted, and what needs time. That clarity allows others to relax. When people relax, they open up. The ancients said that the greatest strength is not in commanding respect, but in bringing peace to others. Peace of mind, tranquility of heart, and peace of spirit. When people are at peace, they dare to rely on you, dare to share, and dare to walk alongside you for the long term. Stability isn't innate. It's the result of self-understanding, knowing your capabilities, knowing your limits. It's not making promises beyond your reach. not taking on tasks beyond your capabilities, not saying things you can't keep. People who do this often don't stand out, but they are very persistent. Ancient wisdom holds that a stable person is like the ground. They don't need to soar high, but everyone stands on it. They don't need to attract attention, but without them, everything becomes unstable. Their value is only revealed when others need support. In relationships, stable individuals are often entrusted with important tasks, not because they are the quickest, but because they carry the least risk. When these tasks are given to them, others can confidently move on to other work without further worry. And that is true credibility. The ancients did not encourage people to give up or be incompetent. They simply reminded us that if we have to choose, we should choose stability over winning or losing. Because winning or losing only brings short-term victories, while stability creates a long-term foundation. In life, you don't need to be better than anyone else. You just need to be someone others can rely on when needed. When you achieve that, you will naturally find your place. No need to compete, no need to fight, no need to prove yourself. Looking back, you'll realize that it was that quiet stability that took you far further than the noisy races. 7. The ancients taught that one should promise less and do more. This is the best way to maintain consistency. This isn't just clever advice, but the culmination of deep observation about human nature and how trust is formed and then lost. In life, people often lose trust not because others make too many mistakes, but because they talk too much compared to what they actually do. Promises always create expectations. When you say something, the listener immediately envisions the outcome. And from that moment, they begin to wait. If the outcome is as promised, trust increases. But if it doesn't come, or comes late, or comes incompletely, trust is immediately eroded. This happens no matter how justifiable your reason may be. The ancients were therefore very cautious with their words. They understood that uttering a word was not just a matter of pronunciation, was placing a burden upon oneself, the burden of responsibility, the burden of repetition, the burden of having to live up to what had been said for a long time. People who make few promises aren't usually cold-hearted. Rather, it's because they understand their own limitations. They know what they can do and how much they can keep, and they only speak when they are certain they can fulfill their promises. This certainty creates a sense of stability for others. Conversely, those who make promises often do so out of good intentions. They want to help, please, and demonstrate responsibility. But when a promise exceeds their capabilities, it becomes a burden. And when that burden isn't fulfilled, others begin to doubt not only the promise itself, but also the person behind it. The ancients said that a promise made but not kept damages one's reputation more than a refusal. Refusal creates a clear boundary, while breaking a promise creates a feeling of being deceived. Even if the speaker didn't intend to mislead, making fewer promises and delivering more helps people maintain consistency. Because when you make fewer promises, actions often outweigh words. Others are not led astray by high expectations, but are instead convinced by tangible results. And tangible results always carry more weight than any explanation. The ancients highly valued quiet, unassuming work. They believed that repeated correct actions were what built deep trust. No one needed to know. No one needed to praise. All that mattered was that the work was done thoroughly. Over time, others would recognize it. That recognition was more enduring than any publicity. In the workplace, those who make fewer promises are often given important tasks. This is because the person assigning the task doesn't have to worry, monitor closely, or remind them as much. They know that if this person accepts the job, they will do it. If they're unsure, they'll say so beforehand. This clarity helps the team function more smoothly. Those who make many promises are the opposite. Initially, they might make a good impression, but gradually, others have to check, remind, and prepare backup plans. This exhaustion doesn't come from the other person not trying, but from the fact that their words and actions no longer match. The ancients said that consistency doesn't mean never making mistakes, but rather not exaggerating what one can accomplish. Once a promise is made, even if difficult, one should find a way to complete it. If mistakes are made, one should admit them promptly, without making excuses or blaming others. This attitude is what keeps a person's image intact. In personal relationships, it's even more important to promise less and do more. Someone who doesn't promise to always be there, but shows up when needed. Someone who doesn't speak but listens. But when you speak, they truly listen. These things create a great sense of security. The ancients understood that people don't need grand promises. They need consistent presence. They need a stable response. They need to know that when needed, they can rely on you. And that reliance shouldn't come with worry. Making fewer promises also helps people avoid having to change their words depending on the circumstances. When you speak less, you don't have to remember what you said to whom. You don't have to worry about conflict. You don't have to adjust the conversation. So simplicity leads to a lighter inner state and more natural behavior. Ancient wisdom holds that the more a person talks, the more likely they are to reveal their inner uncertainty, as they need words to compensate. Conversely, those who are inwardly stable usually speak just enough, letting their actions do the rest. Promising less and delivering more is also a way to show respect to others, because you don't create expectations and then leave them waiting in vain. You give them clarity, clearly stating what they can rely on and what they cannot. This clarity helps others feel secure and plan their lives and work accordingly. Ancient wisdom views consistency as the foundation of all lasting relationships. And that foundation isn't built on grand promises, but on small, repeated actions. Each time a promise is kept, it's a brick. Each time actions outweigh words, it's a solid layer of mortar. Looking back, people rarely remember what you said. They remember what you did when needed. They remember the feeling of security or unease when they were around you. And that feeling was created by the many times you promised little but delivered enough, or even more. The ancients left behind a very simple reminder. To win people's hearts, keep your word. And to keep your word, don't talk too much. When words lag behind actions, consistency will naturally form. And once consistency is established, trust will come quietly, but lastingly. 8. People who constantly change their attitudes for personal gain lose credibility very quickly. This is something the ancients observed very clearly when looking at how people rise or fall amidst turbulent times. Credibility is not lost in a single moment, but gradually through repeated changes in tone, attitude, and stance, all for short-term gain. In life, people can accept an imperfect person, but it's very difficult to accept someone who is unpredictable. Friendly today for personal gain, cold tomorrow because they've lost value. Preaching morality today, turning pragmatic tomorrow. These changes keep others on guard. And once they are on guard, credibility has no place to exist. The ancients said that credibility lies not in pronouncements, but in the consistency of one's attitude. How do you behave when circumstances are favorable? Do you still behave that way when circumstances are unfavorable? It is in moments of adversity that one's true character is most clearly observed. Those who change for their own benefit often consider themselves flexible, adaptable, and resourceful. However, the ancients clearly distinguished between flexibility and inconsistency. Flexibility means changing methods while maintaining core values. Inconsistency means changing core values solely to protect one's own interests. Others quickly perceive this difference. When someone says one thing today and something different tomorrow simply because their interests have shifted, the listener will no longer believe what they say, not because what they said today was wrong, but because they don't know if that same person will contradict it tomorrow. The ancients understood that people need a point of support. That point of support is consistency in attitude. When attitudes change erratically, that point of support disappears. And when there is no point of support, people have no choice but to keep their distance. Historically, the ancients recounted the story of an official who lived during a time of turmoil. Times changed constantly. Power shifted hands. Interests reversed. Many people, seeking peace, switched sides, changed their words, and changed their behavior in a short time. But that official was different. When he held power, he maintained the old rules. He didn't show favoritism because of personal connections, nor did he compromise principles for personal gain. His decisions might not please everyone, but they were always clear, consistent, and predictable. When the tide turned and power was gone, he didn't change his stance to defend himself. He didn't contradict what he had said before. He didn't deny his past decisions. He accepted the risks, but maintained his previous attitude, calm, dignified, without begging or maneuvering. It was during that perilous period that people observed very closely. They saw that this man did not change for power, fear, or self-interest. And from that, a very deep belief was formed. Despite the turbulent times, they still believed in his character. What was remarkable was that this official didn't need to speak about morality. He didn't need to assert his position. His unwavering attitude spoke volumes. People trusted him not because he was powerful, but because he was stable. The ancients considered this the foundation of credibility. Credibility doesn't come from being on the winning side, but from not changing sides to align with the winning side. When you maintain a consistent stance, whether winning or losing, others will dare to place their trust in you. Conversely, those who shift their attitude based on self-interest may be safe in the short term, but the price they pay is isolation in the long term. Initially, others may cooperate for mutual benefit, but they always keep their distance because they know that when the interests shift, this person will also change their attitude. The ancients said that no one wants to entrust important tasks to someone whose attitude changes with the wind, because no one knows where that person will stand in times of difficulty. This very uncertainty causes credibility to crumble very quickly. In modern life, this remains unchanged. A person who is enthusiastic at work today because it benefits them may be indifferent tomorrow because they are no longer getting attention. A person who is close to a relationship today because it is necessary may be distant tomorrow because they have achieved their goal. These changes don't need to be stated, but others can sense them. Reputation is lost quickly because it doesn't require much proof. Just a few instances of a change in attitude are enough. A different look, a different tone of voice, and a different way of handling things when the benefits are gone. These small details accumulate very quickly in people's minds. The ancients believed that maintaining composure in adversity is far more difficult than in favorable circumstances. But it is precisely this difficulty that creates true credibility. When people see that whether you win or lose, are rich or poor, have power or not, you remain the same, they will trust you. That belief is not loud. It needs no declaration. But it is enduring. It makes others dare to stand by you, dare to defend you, dare to rely on you when needed. Just as the people trusted that official, even in turbulent times, the ancients left a very clear reminder. Reputation is not built when things are going well, but is tested when things are going badly. Those who overcome these challenges with consistency will have a lasting place in people's hearts. Those who are fickle and driven by self-interest may progress quickly, but it's difficult for them to go far. No one dares to stay with someone whose future is uncertain. Conversely, those who maintain a stable attitude may move slowly, but each step is firm. And behind them, people naturally come together. Ultimately, the ancients didn't teach people to be rigid, only taught not to compromise values for short-term gains, because gains may come and go, but reputation, once lost, is very difficult to regain. And in a constantly changing world, only those who maintain their integrity are truly steadfast. 9. Consistency is not stubbornness. It's about maintaining the fundamentals while being flexible at the branches. This is one of the subtle distinctions that the ancients left behind when discussing how to live amidst change. Many people fear that if they live consistently, they will become rigid, difficult to adapt, and easily fall behind. But the ancients saw it differently. They believed that stubbornness is refusing to change one's way of doing things, while consistency is not losing sight of what one believes in. The roots and the branches are two very different levels. The roots are values, they are principles. They are what a person considers irreplaceable. The branches are methods, they are ways of behaving. They are the specific path to achieving a goal. A wise person holds the roots very firmly, but at the branches, they are always flexible. They know how to bend, how to change, and how to adapt to the times. The ancients said that those without a solid foundation easily mistake flexibility for recklessness. They say one thing today and something different tomorrow. They do one thing today and the opposite tomorrow. They think they are adapting, but in reality, they are being swept along by self-interest. When the foundation is weak, any change will inevitably arouse suspicion. Conversely, for someone with a clear foundation, even if they change their approach, others will still feel secure. They know that the change doesn't distort values or betray principles. It's simply choosing a more suitable path in the new circumstances. Ancient people observed that humans don't fear change. They fear change in color. Changing methods is normal, but changing one's stance, attitude, and values for self-interest is very dangerous, because it destroys one's spiritual foundation. A truly consistent person might handle different situations very differently, but the feeling they create for others remains constant. It's still fairness. It's still clarity. It's still a predictable attitude. This is what prevents them from being seen as stubborn, and instead makes them seem trustworthy. Stubbornness arises when circumstances have changed, but people cling to a way of doing things simply because they are used to it, even if it is harmful or no longer suitable. Stubbornness often stems from the ego, from the fear of admitting one's mistakes, and from clinging to old images. Consistency is different. Consistency allows for change, but it's a directed change. When they see that the old way of doing things is no longer effective, consistent people are willing to adjust, but they adjust within the boundaries of their chosen values, not for short-term gain that goes against what they've always believed in. Ancient people likened a person with a firm foundation to a large tree. The trunk stands still, but the branches and leaves can sway in the wind. Strong winds bend them considerably, while gentle winds cause less shaking. But the roots remain firmly anchored in the earth. Because of this, the tree does not fall. People without roots are the opposite. They think they are flexible, but in reality, they are easily uprooted. When the wind changes direction, they change course. When interests shift, they change their attitude. Initially, they may seem agile, but in the long run, no one will dare rely on them. In the workplace, those who maintain the core values may change strategies, organizational structures, and methods. But they don't change how they treat people, their standards of fairness, or their responsibilities. Therefore, even if things change, people's hearts remain at peace. The same applies to personal relationships. A consistent person isn't always accommodating or rigid. They know when to be flexible, when to back down, when to speak, and when to remain silent. But what's constant is respect, honesty, and clear boundaries. Others sense that very quickly. The ancients taught that consistency is the ability to leave others guessing. No matter what you do, they know you won't do anything wrong. You won't cross any boundaries. This predictability creates a great sense of security. Many people are afraid of being seen as conservative, so they are always changing. But the more they change without understanding the fundamentals, the more they lose credibility, because others don't know who they really are. Are you saying something sincerely today, or just because of circumstances? Will you deny it tomorrow? The ancients emphasized that flexibility is not about saying things differently, but about doing them differently. The goal remains the same, the values remain the same, but the path can change. Those who understand this will not be trapped by form, nor will they lose sight of essence. A person with strong roots doesn't need to declare their consistency. Others will sense it over time through various situations. When they see that, despite changing circumstances, this person maintains their familiar character, trust naturally develops. Consistency, therefore, is not about standing still. It's about moving forward without getting lost, without losing sight of values, without losing sight of principles.
Without losing sight of how to be a good person?
When you can do that, you can adapt to many circumstances without losing yourself. The ancients left a profound reminder. Those who don't change their roots become stronger the further they go. Those who change their roots become increasingly exhausted the more they struggle, because each change requires explanation, compensation, and rebuilding trust. Ultimately, living consistently doesn't slow a person down. It only makes their steps more secure. When the roots are strong, the branches can be flexible without fear of breaking. And when you are both flexible and have a strong foundation, others won't see you as stubborn, but as a pillar of support. 10 people with clear principles rarely need explanations. This statement sounds simple at first glance, but the longer one lives, the more experiences one has, the more one understands it. Because most of the fatigue in relationships doesn't come from making huge mistakes, but from having to constantly explain things that shouldn't need to be said. Principles are a person's inner boundaries. They let others know what you can and cannot do, how far you are willing to go, and where you will stop. When these boundaries are clear, others will adjust their behavior accordingly. No need for much questioning, no need for much testing, no need for scrutiny. The ancients observed this very carefully. They realized that the more frequently a person changes their stance, the easier it is to justify themselves. They say one thing today and do something different tomorrow. Others are forced to question, to doubt, to demand explanations. Not because they are difficult, but because they cannot discern the truth. Conversely, people with clear principles tend to create a sense of consistency. Whatever their decision, others are not too surprised because it falls within a known framework. When the outcome is predictable, the need for questioning is greatly reduced. A clear principle doesn't mean rigidity. It simply means you know what is non-negotiable. For example, someone who is always punctual always keeps promises. Whether busy or free, whether it benefits or disadvantages others, they won't need to ask why you arrived early or late today, because they'll assume you'll be on time. If there's a change, they understand it's unavoidable. The ancients said that explanations are only necessary when behavior contradicts established norms. If behavior consistently conforms to pre-existing principles, explanations become superfluous. Others will find their own valid reasons for your actions instead of harboring suspicions. A person without clear principles often lives in a state of having to talk a lot, having to explain, having to justify, having to clarify their point. But the more they talk, the harder it is for others to believe them, because words replace stability. Stability cannot be created by words alone. Principles are like a foundation. When the foundation is strong, the house doesn't need temporary supports. Explanations are similar. They are temporary solutions when belief isn't strong enough. People who live by principles build their beliefs early on, so they don't need to patch things up later. The ancients once said that a virtuous person values actions more than words. This isn't because words are unimportant, but because repeated actions build credibility. When credibility is strong enough, even a small action is understood correctly, and even silence isn't misinterpreted. In the workplace, people with clear principles are usually very easy to work with. This is because they don't make others guess their intentions. They don't change their standards based on their mood, nor do they change their decisions based on what others are saying. As a result, subordinates know what to do, colleagues know how to cooperate, and superiors know how to trust them. When problems arise, principled people usually say very little because everyone knows where their reasoning lies and what their decisions are based on. Conversely, unprincipled people have to talk at length, but the longer they talk, the more uncertain others feel. The same applies to personal relationships. People who have clear principles regarding boundaries, respect, and what is unacceptable usually have fewer arguments. Not because they are always right, but because they don't create gray areas. Others know where to stop, so they are less likely to cross those boundaries. Ancient wisdom holds that excessive explanation is often a sign of inner uncertainty. When one is unsure of oneself, explanations tend to be defensive. But when the principle is clear, all words are merely information, not justification. There's a subtle difference. People with clear principles don't need to declare them every day. They demonstrate them through repeated actions. Over time, others draw their own conclusions. Once those conclusions are formed, explanation becomes unnecessary. The ancients said that reputation is like an underground stream. When it's deep enough, the surface is very calm. It's not noisy. It doesn't fluctuate. People with principles are the same. Their lives may seem ordinary on the outside, but they are very stable on the inside. People who constantly change their principles according to circumstances often think they are flexible, but they don't realize the price they pay is having to explain themselves their whole lives. Today they explain to one person, tomorrow to another, and even after explaining, they're not guaranteed to be believed. Conversely, those who adhere to principles must endure hardship in the beginning. They may be perceived as rigid, difficult, or unyielding, but in the long run, they benefit because others become accustomed to those limits. There are no more challenges, no more bargaining. The ancients concluded very concisely, people with clear principles don't need to say much. Their lives speak for themselves. Every action they take reinforces their image. Once that image is clear enough, no one will ask any further questions. Live this way, not to show off, but to ease your own burden. Less explaining, less defenselessness. When you are clear with yourself, the world around you becomes clearer. And when everything is clear, the heart naturally finds peace. 11. Consistency creates a sense of fairness. Fairness creates peace of mind. This is a very simple, logical sequence, yet it forms the deepest foundation for building trust between people. Ancient people observed society not through theory, but through real life. They realized that wherever people feel insecure, there is often a lack of consistency. And when there is a lack of consistency, the feeling of fairness gradually disappears. Consistency is not a skill, but a state of mind. A consistent person maintains the same standards in all circumstances. It's not changing their stance based on personal relationships. It's not shifting their position for personal gain or loss, and not breaking long-standing principles due to fleeting emotions. When standards are maintained, others perceive fairness. Fairness doesn't necessarily mean treating everyone exactly the same. Fairness is about knowing how to adjust without deviating from the fundamental principles. For example, a leader might be strict with one person and lenient with another. But the core remains the same principle of responsibility and respect. When people see that the difference doesn't stem from favoritism, but from specific circumstances, they will accept it and feel secure. Ancient people highly valued a sense of security. They believed that people could only do good work and maintain long-term commitment when they didn't have to be wary, guess what others were thinking, or worry about being treated differently tomorrow. Consistency is what frees people from needing to be on guard. When an environment lacks consistency, fairness becomes a luxury. Today, a small mistake is overlooked. Tomorrow, the same mistake is severely punished. Today, a certain statement is praised. Tomorrow, the same statement is criticized. In such circumstances, people no longer care about right or wrong, but only about how to avoid being taken advantage of. A defensive mentality emerges, and peace of mind disappears. The ancients said that what people fear most is uncertainty, not knowing what will happen next, not knowing if they will be treated differently. Consistency is the antidote to this fear. When everything is predictable, the human mind will be at peace. A person who is consistent in their words and actions creates a very strong sense of fairness. When they make a promise, everyone believes that promise applies to all. There are no hidden exceptions, no secret preferences. Whether the outcome is favorable or not, others still accept it because they see the standard being upheld. Fairness born from consistency is also emotional fairness. When someone is happy today and irritable tomorrow, but their treatment of others remains balanced without venting anger or showing bias, those around them will feel safe. They know that your personal emotions don't disrupt the overall order. The ancients particularly emphasized this in the matter of personnel management. A leader who is consistent in rewarding and punishing, even with strict decisions, will still command respect. Everyone knows the boundaries, and everyone knows the consequences of their actions. There are no blind spots. Conversely, when consistency is broken, fairness immediately wavers. Just a few unclear exceptions, a few decisions that go against established norms, and people will start to compare themselves to others. Comparison leads to suspicion. Suspicion leads to insecurity. And when insecurity arises, all relationships become strained. The peace of mind that fairness brings is not noisy. It's quiet, but it's lasting. People with peace of mind don't need to prove they're right. They don't need to fight for the betterment. They focus on what they need to do, because they believe their efforts will be recognized as they truly are. Ancient people believed that for society to be stable, it didn't need too many laws. It only needed consistency in their application. When today's laws differ from yesterday's, no matter how good they are, no one will believe them anymore. But when a principle is upheld for a long time, people will naturally adjust their behavior. The same applies to everyday life. A parent who is consistent in their parenting style will make their child feel treated fairly. When fairness is perceived, the child will feel secure. And when they feel secure, they will develop healthily. If today you allow something and tomorrow you forbid it, the child will become confused and won't know what is right. In friendships and family relationships, consistency is also fundamental. A person who always maintains a respectful attitude, who doesn't say hurtful things when they're close, and who doesn't break boundaries when they're angry, will give those around them peace of mind, and they know that no matter what happens, they will still be treated fairly. Ancient wisdom shows that people are willing to suffer losses, but not to endure injustice. Losses can be overcome, but the feeling of being treated inconsistently lingers. It erodes trust, and once trust is lost, it's very difficult to regain. Consistency creates fairness because it eliminates feelings of favoritism. When no one receives special treatment and no one is targeted unusually, the group will be peaceful. People won't need to compete through underhanded tactics or curry favor. They will simply do their part. Fairness breeds peace of mind. Peace of mind breeds commitment. Commitment breeds responsibility. Responsibility breeds sustainable results. Our ancestors had a far-sighted vision. They didn't seek to control people through pressure, but through stability in their behavior. People who live consistently don't need to talk much about fairness. Their actions demonstrate it every day. Others perceive it through experience, not through promises. Ultimately, consistency doesn't make life rigid. On the contrary, it creates a safe space for people to be themselves. When there's no fear of being treated unfairly, the mind is lighter, relationships deepen, and hearts naturally come together. The ancients summarized it very simply: to find peace of mind, maintain consistency within yourself. When you are stable, the world around you will be less turbulent. When fairness is perceived, peace of mind will naturally arise, and that is the most solid foundation for any long-lasting relationship. 12. People who are consistent and unwavering usually don't need to show off. Their actions speak for themselves. The ancients clearly saw this in how people build their reputation. The more a person tries to prove themselves, the more likely they are to reveal their inner instability. Conversely, those who live consistently for a long time become very quiet. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they know that repeated actions are the most powerful language. In life, people often judge each other not by a single moment, but by a series of actions over a long period. A kind word might make an impression, but that impression is fleeting. Just one contradictory action can render all previous words meaningless. People who are consistent understand this, so they don't place much emphasis on making a good first impression. They focus on living each day in a way that is fundamentally the same. The act of speaking for oneself is because it doesn't need explanation. When a person is always punctual, there's no need to boast about being disciplined. When a person always keeps their word, there's no need to claim trustworthiness. When a person always treats others fairly, there's no need to emphasize their integrity. Others observe that sequence of actions and form their own conclusions. And conclusions formed spontaneously are always more enduring than conclusions drawn through persuasion. Ancient wisdom holds that self-expression is the task of those who are not yet stable, those who are unsure of their identity and position. Therefore, they need to use words to solidify their image. Those who are inwardly stable, however, are not in a hurry. They know that sooner or later their actions will speak for them, and that answer is usually very convincing. People who are consistent don't need to adjust their image for each person because they don't have two faces. They don't need to guess what to say, to whom, or how to present themselves appropriately. This simplicity makes others feel comfortable. When interacting with them, people don't have to be wary or worry about whether you're one way today and different tomorrow. Consistent behavior creates a sense of predictability. Predictability is the foundation of trust. When people know how you'll react in familiar situations, they feel secure. Security doesn't require grand promises. Just observe how you handle the small things each day. The ancients placed great importance on actions taken in unnoticed situations, because that is where true behavior is revealed. A person might preach morality to others, but act differently behind their back, no matter how skillfully concealed. This discrepancy will eventually be discovered, rendering all previous actions meaningless. People who are consistent and unwavering tend to talk little about themselves, not because they are falsely humble, but because they don't see the need. When their actions are clear, more is superfluous. They dedicate their energy to doing their part right, rather than spending time managing their image in the eyes of others. In the workplace, such individuals are often entrusted with important tasks without needing to compete, ask for permission, or prove themselves. This is because those assigning the tasks know that the outcome will be no different from previous times. This stability is more valuable than any promise, as it reduces risk. People always seek out the least risky option. In relationships, consistent people create a very strong sense of security. When you're sad, they maintain a respectful attitude. When you're going through difficulties, they don't change their behavior. When you succeed, they don't suddenly become closer. That consistency calms the heart. The ancients said that what people fear most is unexpected behavior. Not pleasant surprises, but surprises in attitude. Friendly today, cold tomorrow. Promises today, forgotten tomorrow. Such people, no matter how talented, will wear others down. Conversely, consistent people make relationships easier. The act of speaking up for oneself also lies in the fact that it doesn't seek credit. When they accomplish something, consistent individuals maintain their usual behavior. No boasting, no demanding recognition. But it is precisely this quietness that makes their achievements stand out more, because they are not confused with self-praise. Ancient sages observed that those who constantly show off often put pressure on those around them, as this implicitly creates comparisons. Those who remain consistent, however, do not. They don't use their achievements to force others to see them, therefore they are more approachable, and people's hearts open up naturally. Long-term consistency creates a very special kind of reputation. A reputation that needs no protection, no explanation needed. Just continue living as you always have, each day without deviation. That kind of reputation accumulates slowly, but it's very difficult to lose. The ancients called this the power of those who do not need to speak. When actions are substantial enough, words become insignificant. Not because words are weak, but because actions bear the heaviest burden. Ultimately, those who remain steadfast don't need to show off. Not because they are short, but because they stand firm. When a person stands firm, they don't need to raise their hand to prove they are standing. Others can see it. And that very silence is the clearest affirmation of their worth. 13. The ancients said that what people fear most is uncertainty. Consistency is the best medicine for peace of mind. This is a very profound observation, as it touches upon the most silent fears in human relationships. People don't fear hardship or scarcity, but rather the uncertainty of what will happen next. They fear that today will be one way and tomorrow another. They fear changing attitudes, ambiguous standards, and the inability to discern the true intentions of the person in front of them. Uncertainty keeps people constantly stressed. When they don't know how they will be treated, they are forced to be defensive. They have to calculate. They have to preserve a degree of trust. This defensiveness is not noisy, but it silently drains away the bond. Relationship may still exist, but there's no longer any sense of security. The ancients observed this very clearly in life. They saw that places where people were suspicious of each other, wary of each other, were often places lacking consistency. Words spoken today were not the same as yesterday. Rules applied at one time were different at another. Those favored today might be abandoned tomorrow. In such an environment, no one dared to place their complete trust. Consistency isn't about rigidity. It's about keeping the core principles unchanged. When your principles are stable, those around you will feel a sense of security. They know that no matter how circumstances change, no matter how emotions fluctuate, how you treat them will remain within familiar boundaries. It is these boundaries that create peace of mind. The ancients called consistency a calming medicine because it soothes invisible anxieties. When people know that you won't react extremely, that you won't change your attitude for personal gain, that you won't be friendly today and cold tomorrow, their hearts will settle down. When the heart is calm, relationships naturally become stronger. In the workplace, a consistent person inspires confidence in others when entrusting tasks. It's not because they are the best, but because they are the most stable. When assigning tasks to them, others don't have to worry about unexpected changes, about accepting the job today and rejecting it tomorrow, or about standards shifting midway. The same applies to relationships. Consistency in how you show care, how you behave, and how you maintain boundaries prevents your partner from having to guess, test, or strain to adapt. This sense of security is far more valuable than grand promises. Ancient people understood that uncertainty drains human energy. Constantly observing, analyzing, and preventing leads to fatigue. When fatigue sets in, people gradually withdraw, even without saying it. Consistency saves that energy. When things are predictable, people focus on what matters more. A person behaves the same way today as they do tomorrow. It's not because they lack flexibility, but because they respect the security of others. They understand that every erratic change sows seeds of insecurity, even unintentionally and without malice. The result is still to unsettle people's hearts. The ancients also said that uncertainty often comes from those who don't know who they are, or don't know their own principles. When the inner self is unclear, the outer self will waver. They become soft when faced with strong people, and hard when faced with weak people. They advance when faced with benefit, and retreat when faced with harm. Such people are very difficult to bring peace of mind to, because no one knows their true nature. Consistency is a manifestation of inner stability. When a person knows what remains constant, they don't need to overreact, prove anything, or try to please others. That very stability radiates to others, and around them, people feel at ease. The ancients use the word medicine very accurately, because peace of mind is not something that can be forced. It cannot be demanded. It only appears when people feel sufficiently secure, and that security is created from repetition. It's from familiar behaviors, from unchanging standards. It's from words matching actions. In a family, children need consistency to feel secure. If today something is allowed, and tomorrow something is forbidden, children will be confused. When the rules are clear, even strict, children still feel safe because they know where the limits are. The same applies to groups. People need to know boundaries, what is acceptable and what is not. Ancient people believe that those who bring peace of mind to others are greatly blessed. They are welcomed wherever they go, not because they try to please others, but because they don't cause unrest. This sense of peace accumulates gradually, becoming credibility and a source of support. Ultimately, consistency isn't about controlling others, but about keeping your environment calm. When you're stable, others will have less to be wary of. When they don't have to be wary, people will feel closer. That's the quiet strength that the ancients called peace of mind medicine. 14. Winning hearts and minds over the long term takes time. Consistency is the way to accumulate credibility over time. The ancients clearly saw this principle when observing human life. Trust is not formed in a single meeting, doesn't arise from a single kind word. Rather, it is built through countless small interactions, through repeated actions, and through consistent behavior over the years. Time itself doesn't create credibility. Some people are together for a very long time, yet still lack trust. This is because each stage reveals a different face, and each situation requires a different approach. Credibility only arises when it's guided by consistency. Without consistency, time only reveals further instability. The ancients understood that people are always silently observing, even without speaking. Every time you keep your word or break a promise, every time you treat others fairly or unfairly, every time you maintain your stance or shift your position for personal gain, all of this is recorded in people's hearts. No records are needed, no evidence is required. Time is the most honest repository. Consistency means doing the same thing tomorrow as you do today. It's not because you're rigid, but because you have a clear foundation. When the foundation is clear, behavior naturally stabilizes. Others don't need to guess, test, or investigate. They just need to look back at what happened before. Credibility is built when others can rely on your memory. They remember how you've done things before, and they believe it will be the same this time. This predictive ability creates trust. When people don't have to worry about unexpected changes, they feel comfortable delegating tasks, emotions, and responsibilities. The ancients placed great importance on small, repetitive tasks, as consistency is most clearly demonstrated there. A person might speak eloquently about principles, but if they frequently make mistakes in small matters, their reputation will not be built. Conversely, a person who doesn't talk much, but consistently performs every small task, will gradually become a reliable asset. Time helps people see the truth, but consistency makes that truth clear. A good deed might be accidental, twice might be an attempt, but 10 times in a row will become ingrained in the eyes of others. Once behavior is perceived as inherent, credibility begins to form. The ancients did not believe in reputations built too quickly. They knew that anything that hasn't stood the test of time is fragile. Consistency is the key to making time an ally. Each day should be consistent. Each decision should not betray its roots. Time will do the rest. Some people are very eager to be believed, to be recognized, to be followed, but they lack patience with their own behavior. Today they do one thing. Tomorrow they want something different. They forget that people's hearts don't change as quickly as their emotions. People's hearts need repeated evidence. Consistency isn't about maintaining the same form. It's about maintaining the same values. Circumstances may change. Methods may be flexible, but core standards remain unchanged. When others see that, regardless of changing circumstances, the values you uphold remain the same, they will begin to believe. The ancients said that reputation is like a deposit. Every correct action is a deposit. Every breach of trust is a withdrawal. But the important thing is that withdrawals are always faster than deposits. One instance of consistency is not enough. It takes many consecutive instances. But just a few instances of contradiction can cause accumulated funds to be lost very quickly. Therefore, wise people don't seek to do things big, but rather to do them consistently. They don't need attention-grabbing actions. They need actions that are flawless. It is this consistency that makes time valuable. Each year that passes is not wasted, but transformed into prestige. In the workplace, consistent individuals are often given long-term assignments, not because they are the best, but because they pose the least risk. The person assigning the task knows that whatever they assign today will yield similar results tomorrow. This stability is invaluable, and only time will tell. In personal relationships, consistent people create a sense of security. They don't make others change to adapt. They don't make others guess their mood. As time passes in that stability, a natural bond forms. No vows are needed. The ancients saw that the greatest prestige doesn't come from saying who you are, but from what others say about you when you're not around. And what they say isn't based on a single memory, but on a whole process, a process accumulated over time through consistency. Ultimately, winning people's hearts and minds for the long term cannot be rushed. Those who want to go fast often have to change direction constantly, but those who want to go far must maintain their direction. Consistency is the compass. Time is the road. When these two go together, credibility will naturally form. No need to compete, no need to beg, no need to show off. And that is the most sustainable way to gain a lasting place in people's hearts. 15. The highest level is making others feel secure enough to entrust you with tasks, to entrust your words, to entrust your trust. The ancients considered this the pinnacle of winning hearts and minds, because when someone is willing to entrust important things to you, it means they are no longer wary, no longer have doubts, no longer harbor any room for retreat. Trusting someone to delegate tasks doesn't come from fleeting talent, but from long-term stability. A skilled person can accomplish difficult tasks, but someone who inspires confidence is someone whose work outcomes are predictable, not necessarily accurate, but how they will handle it. When people don't have to worry about surprises, their minds become calmer. The ancients understood that delegating tasks is essentially delegating risk. When you delegate a task, you place your own reputation in your hands. If you are inconsistent, if you change your standards, if you make promises you don't keep, the person who delegated the task will always be anxious. And when they are anxious, they will no longer delegate the task. A highly skilled individual is someone who inspires others to delegate tasks without needing much instruction, constant checking, or reminders of every detail. This is because the person delegating the task already possesses a deep trust. They believe you will handle it in your usual way. Following the fundamental principles you've maintained throughout your career, giving instructions is even harder than assigning tasks, because words are related to honor. When someone dares to let you speak on their behalf, dares to let you convey their meaning, it means they trust that you won't distort, add or subtract for personal gain, or say something different to please others. This trust cannot be built overnight. Ancient people were very cautious with their words. They knew that a single wrong word could ruin years of accumulated credibility. Those who inspire confidence in others are usually those who speak little, but each word they utter is decisive, unambiguous, and unchanging depending on the listener. This clarity creates a sense of security. Trust is the highest level, because trust cannot be taken back once it has been given. Once given, if betrayed, the wound is very deep. The person willing to entrust you with their trust is someone who has observed you for a long time. They have seen you in many situations, both favorable and unfavorable, and you have maintained consistent behavior. The ancients said that a trustworthy person is someone who doesn't keep others on edge. They don't have to wait to see how you'll behave today. They don't have to guess whether you'll change your attitude if your interests change. When someone doesn't need to think too much about you, that's a sign of deep trust. This peace of mind doesn't come from always being right. It comes from always being clear. Clear about principles. Clear about limits. Clear about what you can and cannot do. Others would rather entrust a task to someone with clear boundaries than someone who can say whatever they want. Because boundaries create certainty. The ancients highly valued stability, not prominence, not excellence, but stability. A stable person doesn't make others wary. When there's no need to be wary, people's hearts open up. And when hearts are open and trusting, things becomes natural. In a team, the person who inspires confidence in others is often not the most talkative, but the one who causes the least disruption, surprises, and erratic behavior. It's this stability that makes people want to rely on them. Delivering messages is also delivering social prestige. When you speak on behalf of a group, a family, a team, you are carrying their image. The person entrusted with delivering the message has proven that they don't use words to elevate themselves by putting others down. They maintain honesty in their expression and respect in their language. Building trust is the result of many small acts of not letting others down. It's not about doing something grand, but about not doing anything wrong. Each time you keep your word, it's a plus. Each time you act fairly, it's a plus.
After many such instances,
trust becomes strong enough to be entrusted with important responsibilities. The ancients observed that those who want to be entrusted with more responsibilities must first learn not to worry others. Don't make others have to monitor you. Don't make others have to remind you. Don't make others have to correct you. When you do work that makes others feel at ease, they will want to give you more. The highest level of achievement isn't being praised, but being trusted. It's not about being noticed, but being entrusted with responsibilities. When others are willing to delegate tasks, entrust their words, and place their trust in you, it means you've become a pillar of support. The ancients considered this a great blessing, because those who possess this blessing will find a place wherever they go. No need to compete, no need to beg, no need to show off. Just continue living consistently as you have always done. And time will speak the strongest confirmation for you. Consistency won't make you stand out quickly, but it will help you stand firm for a long time. The ancients were far-sighted when they spoke of this, understanding that life isn't a sprint, but a long journey filled with changes. On that journey, those who stand firm are always more valuable than those who shine brightly but fade quickly. In a world of constant change, people are easily swept away by novelty, by immediate gains, and by fleeting emotions. But precisely because of this, those who maintain consistency and integrity become rare. And that rarity naturally becomes a source of support. When everything around them changes, people always seek a fixed point to cling to. Consistent people aren't inflexible. Rather, they have an unchanging foundation. Circumstances may change, roles may change, but the way they treat others remains consistent with familiar standards. It is this familiarity that creates a sense of security. When security arises, people naturally feel closer to each other. Winning hearts and minds doesn't require eloquence. Words only last for a moment, but actions endure. A good promise might move someone, but only repeated actions will earn their trust. Trust isn't because you're right, but because you consistently do what you say. To live authentically means to live without betraying the values you have chosen. Whether things are favorable or difficult, whether you gain or lose, live consistently, each day remaining true to those values. It's not being strict today and lenient tomorrow. Not being enthusiastic today and indifferent tomorrow. Living sustainably means accepting a slower pace, but a longer one. You don't need immediate results, just that you don't stray from the right path. Ancient wisdom holds that people's hearts are very sensitive. They may not express it verbally, but they sense changes in behavior very clearly. Every time you change for your own benefit, you sow seeds of insecurity. Even small, unintentional changes will gradually erode trust. Conversely, every time you maintain consistency, you build a sense of security. Consistent individuals don't need to introduce themselves much. They don't need to prove their trustworthiness, because those around them speak for them. When When someone needs someone to delegate tasks, entrust words, or give responsibility to, they will think of the person who gives them the least worry, and that's usually the most stable person. The path of consistency doesn't make you famous quickly, doesn't create flashy moments, but it creates depth. Depth is what keeps people together in the long run. When you become someone others can rely on, you've come a long way in winning hearts and minds. If you find these philosophies thought-provoking, please share this video with a trusted friend. And subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to continue learning together how to live more deeply, more firmly, and more steadfastly each day.